Today I'm going to be speaking to Dave Raven, who's a former Liverpool, Carlisle and Tranmere Rovers footballer. How's it going, Dave? You okay?
Very well, yeah. You done?
All good, mate. All good. Thanks for joining me today. Obviously, appreciate your time. How's life at the moment? How's it going?
It's going well, yeah. I'm enjoying it. It's the last 2 years have been up and down like everybody's, but it's all things considered, I've had a very enjoyable couple of years. I'm not going to lie. It's the lockdown came and it was 100 mile an hour to zero, and it was like, wow, you were able to reset. And I'm sure a few people have said the same.
Yeah.
Then went into pondering my future as a player, and carried on playing part-time for Marine in level 8 in the pyramid. So that was new to me, and it turned out to be the best decision I ever made playing on. And I just couldn't believe how it turned out, and we're going on an amazing cup run and play Spurs and stuff. So I've had an amazing year and a half really in terms of them things. Work's been okay. Obviously, it's been in and out with the pandemic. I'm coaching at a school in a college in Manchester and in Ellesmere. So that's been fine. I've had a good 18 months. Yeah.
That's good. I mean, it's obviously we're in a situation where I think we're at the back end of the pandemic now, and obviously some people have had tough times, and like you just said there, you've been one of the lucky ones, and I think I'm in that category as well, where kind of the last year or so has been good for myself as well. So it's been a positive from that perspective, and I always try and say to people, irrespective of their situation, just try and be positive. I think that always helps anyway. So you mentioned there you're still playing. So what's the situation there then? You said obviously you're playing for Marine, and I've seen a couple of your games on TV. I know you've had a decent cup run and stuff, and also you're working as well. So how have you found that side of it? Because I know we'll touch on this a bit later on, but you obviously had a professional career, so you're now playing part-time. How have you found that?
When everything's normal, it's not easy. I've always said I take my hat off to the guys who've done it for years. I mean, I've played with lads who've just all they've ever done is worked and played part-time. And part-time football isn't as part-time as it sounds. Like mentally, it's still as draining as it ever is. You're training twice a week at night time and then at the weekend. So your full Saturday's gone as usual. Your Tuesday and your Thursday night is gone. And it's a big commitment. And obviously, if you've got a game on a Tuesday, say away at, I don't know, a couple of the other side of the country, then you're taking time off work and stuff like that. And then you're up again the next day for work. So it's really, it's full time. It's intense. But at the same time, it's compared to the full-time game, I did recognize that the pressure was different. It is different. It's not your only job. It's not your only source of income. So in terms of that, it's, it was quite quite refreshing in one sense to go play part-time and get a pint and a pie after the game and mix with the other team where you didn't usually do that. And I also found it was really enjoyable. So it's also in some senses weaned me off full-time. At any point in that part-time journey, it was like if it was going to come to an end, then I felt okay with it. And it's just carried on, and I always had the option to carry on. So it was like, okay, I'll keep doing it. It does. I would recommend it if you can get if a professional can get his head around the level and the standard and the different professionalism levels within that environment. Then I would recommend it to a player to sort of wean themselves off it, off the drug of full-time football, if you like. So you just got to accept your situation sometimes and get your ego out the way. And I think once you can do that, you know what I mean? Because the hardest thing for me was playing against players where a year before I was fitter, stronger, quicker. You were getting, won't get much of a sniff. And then it actually becomes a battle at that point in your life where you're slower, you're older. And getting my head around that, the ego part was actually harder than anything else. Right. So it's just that part, I think, that's difficult for players, dropping down. And I fully understand why they don't want to, if they don't have to. I do fully understand why, because it's not an easy thing to do.
Of course, yeah. I mean, in some ways, you touched on something there that I've probably never really thought about. And obviously, I'm miles away from the game now. I retired ages ago. But in terms of like the environment you're in at Marine now, and obviously those players, they're secure in the sense that they're not just relying on football being their sole income. So they've got that kind of they've got that 9 to 5 job or whatever it may be that they're doing, their trade or whatever that they can take forward for the rest of their life. So with that in mind, is the environment a little bit more relaxed on the pitch and off the pitch because they know that, okay, well, if they don't get offered a contract, they've still got their job, but they're probably going to get another part-time contract somewhere else in that kind of level of football. Am I right in thinking that?
You'd probably be right in thinking from the player's point of view, yes, they have to be more flexible. And I mean, I know lads who can't make, say, every other Tuesday and they'll just not make training because their work is more important. Managers will always say your work is more important because it is your sole income. And it is more relaxed in that sense, yes, in terms of, you know as well as anyone and myself, when you're coming through the end of a contract or when lads were, the stress that went with that, trying to find another club, and that element is slightly taken away. I mean, but it doesn't retract away from the fact that they do see themselves as footballers still. You know, they try and be as professional as they can, as you know, at all times. So it doesn't take away from that fact on the pitch and training and stuff like that. So yeah, they do try and act as professional as they can, but they aren't. You're not. It's just it is what it is.
Yeah, and it's a decent standard as well. And I don't think people kind of realise. They assume that if you're not in the Premier League or Championship, like the standard's poor. And maybe they had a case for that like 25, 30 years ago. And in terms of like the standard of play on the pitch, it's more long ball. But the lower down you go in the pyramids now, especially kind of the tier that you're playing at and below, there's players like yourself who you've been through the academy system, you know obviously how the game works and stuff on and off the pitch. So with that in mind, there's going to be a high level of kind of professionalism on the pitch and also off the pitch as well. And I don't think sometimes from the outside, players not like yourself, but the ones who are maybe down there and have been for many years, they don't get that respect that they deserve because the standard is quite high. Well, it's really high, to be honest.
Yeah, you're right. I think there's a certain snobbery in football, and I'm not talking about players here now, but in terms of the whole football family, where they'll look down at that level, and you know it is right far down. But what you're finding now at these levels is everything's filtered down now. So there's certain teams will play like, you know, let's say South Shields, for instance, in the Northern Premier League, they play out from the back like Manchester City. Do you know what I mean? This is what they try and do. That's their philosophy and how they play, and they play great, attractive football. Now, like that a few years ago was unheard of, wasn't it? And now you've got your technology that's affordable now in the filming games and the you know, the vests, the GPS and stuff. That's all filtering down now. So like it's getting better and better, and the levels just going up and up and becoming more and more prominent with players. So yeah, I mean there is that sort of I call it football snobbery really, that you do find at them levels. And the lads I'm mixing with now, there's boys there that should quite easily be playing in the football league, and for one reason or another they're not, whether that be work ethic, whether it just be a bit of luck or something. And there's boys I'm thinking, if you just applied yourself, you know, a little bit more, it wouldn't take much for you to start climbing the leagues, and next minute you find yourself in a full-time team. You know, that's what you want to do. So there is some good players down there.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned that you're obviously coaching as well. So is that kind of part of your transition or retirement process going forward? Are you kind of thinking ahead? I'm assuming you are.
Yeah, I mean, it was always that was my goal. I wanted to coach, manage, and did my badges when I was playing. And I was finished when I was 33. Obviously, not on my terms. I knew it wouldn't be. Football finishes you. You know, we're not like Paul Scholes to get to choose when we retire. Like, I just didn't have any other options at that point, and I just assumed that it would be easy enough to get a coaching job. I was well qualified. I'd had a decent career, and it's just not been the case. So actually playing part-time football became a necessity. Otherwise, I wouldn't have any income at that point. So I couldn't find a job. I was doing surveys, boiler surveys, obviously playing. I was just trying to make ends meet, really. And I must have applied for 40, 50 jobs, probably.
Really?
And I'm sure we'll come to it later, but I mean, it's the thing is that I've found is somebody would have told me, say, you know, 6-7 years ago when I started doing my badges that it'd be as tough, or not even as tough, as just that you can't get as qualified as you'd like to be. So I just assumed you could get on a course. I assumed you could go and get the next badge, but it's not been the case for me. And that's really held me back in terms of, like, you know, the FA don't just supply, like, take for example the FA Youth Elite Award. So that'll be, say, the next step for me, or say a pro license, where you just can't get on them. You just can't do it. So whether you've had a career or not, you need to be working in an academy. But to work in an academy, you need the pro elite youth badge. So
catch 22.
Yes, that's what I've found, and it's just like been, well, what do you do next? Do you know what I mean? And so, you know, the coaching sort of, I fell into the role that I've got now just by just applying for everything, saying yes to everything. I was reliable, I was decent at it, and eventually said, well, God, yeah, we like you. Do you want a full-time role? And it was great, yeah. And that's what I've found, and that's what I'd say to other lads to do. Just
That's
go and
amazing.
do things, just go and speak to people. But
yeah,
I mean, I didn't see the journey happening as it did. So it's, yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Because when I was playing, I never wanted to be a coach. I loved playing, I loved learning, and obviously applied myself correctly on and off the pitch as much as I could. But I didn't love the grass enough to want to transition into coaching. And by nature, from the outside looking in, people assume that, okay, you've been a footballer or a tennis player or whatever, so now you're going to be a coach in that field. I just assumed that those roles were there, or those courses were there, and you just apply and then you get accepted. And now you just said that you have to be in an academy to take certain courses and things like that. So that's really difficult. That must be really frustrating. I wasn't aware, like I said. So
yeah, I mean, I did my badges in Scotland, so I mean, I could say go and do an FA Youth Elite, it's called, in Scotland, but that isn't recognised down in England. They don't recognise it. They downgrade it. So I spoke to people and he said, well, there's no point in you doing it because you'll downgrade it and blah, blah, blah. So, like, you know, again, it's that catch-22, isn't it? You're going, so what do you do next? You know, where do you go with it? So, yeah, I mean, I like working with people. I see management more of a role than coaching, but we'll see. You know, it's just I've started a company with some friends, so that's going well. We're due to roll out some software for the start of next season, which I'll keep to myself for now. But that's quite exciting. But again, it's come from a chat. And it's come from, right, lads, we've got all these different areas of expertise here. We're all sport-minded. We're all experts in our own right. Yeah. What can we do together to make ourselves, you know, as a company, a working company, and just dialogue over a few weeks and months, and next minute ideas are popping up. So that's, again, what I'd definitely recommend in terms of transition stuff, yeah.
Sounds really exciting. So I have to look out for that one. Obviously, you played for like many years, and again we'll touch on that a bit later on. So what transferable skills have you kind of taken from football or kind of within your own life outside of football that you're going to take into coaching going forward, and hopefully management as well?
I suppose, I mean, there are the standard ones. I mean, things like the discipline of being a footballer, I don't think will ever leave me. And my lifestyle, I still always watch what I eat and drink and be on time constantly. Footballers are always on, so they're always early. You know what I mean? It's just what they do. It's just, and I just think that is a brilliant thing to have, like, drilled into you. And a transferable, the communication and the leadership and stuff, that is just, I think that's in you as a sportsman or a footballer. I think you just have to have that, and I think you just have to have a little bit of something about you. You know yourself that players who got ability, like technical ability, but haven't got anything about them, no character, no personality. I think, you know yourself, they struggle. You can't cope with a crowd, or you can't cope with any, you know, things going against you. So I think that's what you get as a footballer. You get a bit of thick skin. And I think the things you go through, some people wouldn't go through that in a lifetime. Do you know what I mean? Like, I say to players, the players ask me what's it like, and I said, well, being a footballer, in my view, is being able to control a ball after you've just given it away 2-3 times on the bounce, and you've got, say, 5,000 or 10,000 people calling you all sorts. Like, it's having the balls to do that. And if you haven't got the balls to do that, then you're not going to be a footballer. And most of the players who play week in, week out aren't necessarily the best players. They're just the most reliable, or they've got the biggest balls.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Mm.
Because as I say, I've seen so many players come and go. We've got better ability, or and you think, why are you at this level? You should be far higher up, or whatever it might be. And there's that. I think that's what it is. It's that mentality.
Definitely true, yeah, and I can relate to that. We've all come across players who you thought kind of like got everything, but then they're like a shrinking violet on the pitch. So amazing in training, and there's kind of little or no pressure, and then it comes to a pitch, and there's like a proper game environment, and they can't handle it. So it is a lot of it's kind of mentality, and obviously your approach to the game and mindset and stuff like that. It seems like you've been pretty studious with your approach to kind of transition away from football, obviously retirement. So did you plan it before, or have you kind of, I know you've touched on it a little bit, but have you kind of, I want you to elaborate a little bit more. Did you kind of plan it a few years ago, or did you kind of know where you wanted to take it?
Yeah, it did, yes. I mean, obviously we're doing the badges and you think, right, okay, your career's going to come to an end in the next few years now. I had kids who were getting to that point where they're starting school, and I was playing up in Scotland, Inverness, and so I thought, well, Inverness, that was coming to an end. I knew that was, and then I had a decision to make. So I could probably have gone and got another club in Scotland, say move to the mid belt and move my family again, or I say, right, we go back to a house we have down south. We make our bills as low as they can possibly be. So you're paying off different loans and stuff like that. So your outgoings are super small. I mean, that's how I prepared for it. And we get the kids, and then I do what I can to find work. And find sort of jobs, and I'm qualified, this, that, and the other. And anyway, it's after going through that and after preparing like that, I was still unprepared. So as small as the bills were, as much as I felt I was mentally prepared, I wasn't. You know what I mean? And I lost money. It was like, you're digging into savings. You're digging into savings all the time just to do the shopping and put petrol in the car and everything else. And that just has a demoralizing effect. And then you're thinking, well, what am I doing today? Like, what's on the cards today? You're just struggling to find a job. And that was the hardest thing, that first year, I would say, of the demoralizing effect of like, wow, like I didn't expect it to be this tough. Even though I thought I was prepared. My problem was that I relocated, and I lost a lot of my contacts. I think that didn't help. If I'd have stayed in Scotland, I had a lot more contacts. I'd been there for 6 years as a player. I was quite well known, playing in the Premier League up there. So I moved back down here, and everyone got, all right, I totally forgot about you. I didn't know who you were. And it took me 2 or 3 years again to build up those contacts. So that was another thing that probably didn't help. But
that's football for you, ain't it? You, like, whenever you leave a club, it's like, we'll keep in touch, we'll meet up and that. And then as soon as you're gone and you're immersed in your club, it's like you're in there. You're not really thinking about kind of where you used to be. Phone stops ringing and things like that. And that's normal. We've all been a victim, and we've all been kind of the aggressor in that situation. It's just one of those things. Life goes on. But in terms of, like, obviously, again, you found it a little bit difficult, and like you've kind of seen the light, and you've kind of come out of the back end of that now, which is great. And I love hearing those stories. But why do some, and I'm talking not just football, kind of all sport now, because I've seen it on all quarters, speaking to different people. Why do you think some find it a lot harder than others? So from a mental perspective, as well as kind of on a social level as well.
Yeah, it's for me, it's I think it all comes to identity. It all comes down to that, like, when you wake up in the morning and you know what you are, you know what you're going to do that day, and you're obviously in that that like environment. It's a high performance environment. I found exercise when I started like not being as fit and as strong as I was. That had a physiological effect on you, and a mental effect. Sorry. So I think there's the things combined, but in terms of what, if you could put like one thing on, I think identity. I think your identity just changes, and having to cope with that. Do you know what I mean? So like, I try and identify as a coach now, and as an ex-footballer, still playing part-time. And it just takes a little bit of time to be able to. It's just time. that you can, it just does take time. But I can see why players go bankrupt. I can see why players get divorced, 100%, after doing it myself, because you are moody. You are like, what's going on? And, if your wife can't handle that and she's off down the road, then there's not much you can do. I had a good wife, I've got a good wife, and she stands by me. And but yeah, I think it's an identity thing. Mostly lads who just wanted to be a footballer all their life. You get to 35, you still think you're young, and you are, and you've got another however 50 years to live or something, whatever it might be. What am I going to do? Yeah, what am I going to be?
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, because I like hearing stories and people's perspective, because it's different. And sometimes when I'm speaking to people who I've been in dressing rooms with and I've known what they were like in terms of banter and stuff, and then you speak to them now and it's like you see a different side to them. And maybe they've always had that side, but they just didn't let it out when they're in the dressing room environment. You know what it's like. And when I hear kind of loss of identity and that, I get frustrated. Even when I'm online, and I'm not really active online. I'm only, a year into being on social media purely because of the podcast. And a lot of friends and ex-teammates have been on there since day dot, like 8-9 years ago. But when I see someone online and they kind of say, oh, I feel like I've lost my identity, I feel compelled to like just respond to them, even if I don't know them, and just say, look, you haven't lost your identity. You're still you. It's the individual first and then the athlete second. That's the best way to approach it, for me anyway. Everyone's different, ain't they? But when it came to like my retirement, I don't know. I felt more relieved than anything. And I think I was relieved purely because I know there are people out there not doubting me, because I never really had that. I know players have people doubting them and stuff. I never really had that. I had good friends and family. So from what I could see, I couldn't see any doubts from them. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know, because obviously I don't know what their kind of premeditated thoughts were. But when it came to like my retirement and I secured a job, and it was a job that I thought, okay, it was pretty sustainable, and kind of it's not one that I'd be embarrassed about, if that makes sense. I just felt relieved, like, okay, I've got a job now. And literally the next day I was like, okay, I've moved on. And it wasn't like I was on the phone calling people saying, oh, I've retired and blah, blah, blah. Because even a year or two later, people still assumed I was playing. So it was more relief for me that I'd found something within kind of a couple of months of not even really looking. I was just having a rest after playing, just a couple months into like off season, and then I found a job. So I was just one of the lucky ones, I assume.
Yeah, because that was probably the hardest thing I found was that. It was that if I'd have got into a good job, it would have been absolutely fine. And the identity issue wasn't there for me either. Finishing, I was a bit like, and I felt the pressure go. I felt like I don't have to like think about all these things I've been thinking about for the last however many years, and that felt okay. And I was happy. I would have I actually had an interview I was at Wrexham. I finished at Wrexham, and I had an interview for the head of youth role there. I didn't get the job, but I would have 100% happily finished for that. There was no issue with me finishing there, but again, it just seemed to go on, and I just couldn't get a job anywhere, and one that I wanted. So that was the major issue for me, and so yeah, I'm obviously speaking with other lads. I do feel identity might be an issue, but yeah, for myself it wasn't so much.
And in terms of retirement, I mean, I don't know how it was for you in terms of when you were playing from Liverpool to Carlisle, Tranmere, and all the other teams that you played for. But when I ever was in discussion about retirement, or someone from the PFA or whatever came in, I always saw it as a bit of a negative subject. It was never like, oh, how are you going to offer your services to other people? Or it was always like, oh, what are you going to do when you finish playing? Or it always had like a negative tone to it. And this is nothing against kind of the people I was speaking to or the PFA who were coming in, but it was always something that you always tried to say, brush to the back, and like, okay, I just want to like make it. Especially when you're 18, 19 and you just come out of the youth team and you're kind of in the reserves there or thereabouts, and you just want to focus on breaking into the first team. The last thing you want to be thinking about is retirement, because you just see it as like 10, 15 years away.
Oh, it's miles away.
Yeah. Do you think the approach to retirement needs to be changed in any way?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it massively does. In my head, I've got ideas what I would like to change. I mean, even the word retirement, I think that needs to be put to
Mm,
the side. Really, if you think about that word, it's got negative connotations to it, hasn't it? It's
yeah.
I mean, transition is which is mostly used, isn't it? But
Mm,
um, just drilling in. I mean, for me, when you're a footballer, you are a footballer. You're in that bubble hugely. Um, Going through the transition, I would have liked to have had more of a grasp on what it actually was I wanted to do, what it was, what the realities of jobs were. I'd like to have had someone say, listen, I'm an accountant, I get paid this, I do this for my job, and I work this hours. If that's for you, then this is what you need to do to get there. You know,
mm,
and you can go on for all the different jobs. And what I'd like to see happen is clubs have a relationship with, because you must have loads of different relationships with outside businesses, to
mm,
say that, listen, can you help our players and take some ownership of it?
mm,
Say, can you help our players? Can you bring them in and give them a taste a day? And if you want more, then they can maybe take them on a part-time basis. If you
mm,
like them, they like you, whatever it might be. I just think clubs need to do more instead of,
mm,
I think the PFA gets a battering.
yeah.
FA gets the battering, and I think clubs need to take more ownership of of their employees, because
Mm,
that's just what you are. But in football, you're just thrown out the window as such, aren't you?
mm,
When you come to an end of your career, so
mm,
well, your contract. That's
yeah.
what I'd like to see happen.
Mm,
But an approach where it's not just the young lads, because you do get approached, do this course, because everybody's like, oh, aren't these guys really poor? They fall out of the game when they're 21 after this dream being broken. And I think, well, not really. No, I think, well, how about the guy that's fallen out when he's 30 and he's just had a
yeah.
big injury and he's got a mortgage and a family, and
Mm,
he needs support. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
But he gets brushed under the carpet. Like,
Mm,
with the guy who's 33, 34, whatever it might be, it's like, yeah, they're the guys who need to be targeted, and they're not targeted.
mm,
The young boys are, which is fine. Get
yeah.
them 100% with another career on the
Yeah.
shoulder, and some of them do. Some of them are. Some of them great.
Mm,
Um, I think the older boys definitely need it. Like, how are you doing? What are you up to? What are your plans? You know what
mm,
I mean? It's
yeah.
what do you want to do next?
Mm,
And I think that needs to happen. I would set up a whole department for it in the PFA. I
yeah.
think a whole department needs setting up for it, because there's too many stories out there that are negative, and we
Mm,
need to shout about the positive ones.
yeah.
Um, and try and obviously dampen the negative ones. But a whole department is needed, in my opinion.
Definitely. And if, as athletes anyway, you always want something that's a bit tangible, something that you can feel and touch, and something that's got some backing behind it. Look, she's done it, he's done it, it can be done. So
Yeah,
again, you've mentioned it there in brief. You said like it's always kind of the negative. Oh, what happens when they get released? What happens when there's an injury and you're 35 and
yeah,
you don't know what to do afterwards? But what about us like singing about success stories, like high
yeah,
echelons of football where they've come out, they don't have to work, but they've gone and set up a business where they're helping other people. And then you've got the
yeah,
players like me and you who are kind of sustaining the career at the lower league or the lower kind of pyramid side of the football, but we've come out of it and we're now obviously progressing in our current field. So it can be done, and if people can see that, we can then go and tell those players, current players, ex-players, look, I did X, Y, and Z. Maybe not do
yeah.
it like me because I went down a bit of a wrong route, for example,
Mhm.
talking hypothetically here. And
Yeah,
again, do it like this person because they had X, Y, and Z when they were playing, and then they came out and the transition period was easy. So again, people have got different transition stories. Mine's not one where I can say, look, I knew what I was going to do. I just fell into something and luckily it worked out. But there are
yeah.
loads of success stories out there, and I'm talking players from before our generation as well. So
Oh, yeah, yeah,
it,
yeah,
it's just a
yeah.
frustrating situation for me.
I, I mean, I must admit now, when I coach lads, I mean, I've got them in a college situation, and a lot of them trying to get into that next level of football. So they're obviously, getting to some of them at an age where they're picking out universities, and they're thinking, I need to pick a university where a football club might be, and blah blah blah. And I said, listen, pick a university based on your education,
Yeah.
because you will go and you'll play football. That won't go away. If you're good enough, people will come, and you'll have to go the long way round, and you'll work up the non-league ladder. You will do that,
Mm,
whether you're a bad uni or a good uni. Pick the uni for being good. I
mm,
said, because you might play 8 years, 10 years, 12. whether you play 500 games or 800 games, one thing is guaranteed when you come out of that little bubble that you've been in, is nobody gives a shit, and they want to know what you can do to earn their money, right? So like, you might go to an employer and say, well, I've just played 500 games in League Two, and they might, I don't care. Can you make this sale? You know?
It's so true. So true.
You know, so in that sense, maybe that needs to be more when you go to, I don't know, when the PFA reps go to the clubs. Listen, guys, do this, because you might earn £1 million, but he might not. So you need to do something that's gonna, you know, improve your chances of getting a job afterwards. So, and have someone like yourself there to say, you know, this is real, this is going to happen, and look, you can make us successful. You might not want to be at my point in that, and that's fine. You're not meant to be. You're not supposed to be an accountant now. Enjoy your life, enjoy being a footballer, but still, right, have this in mind. So I just don't think it's drilled in enough.
100%. I want to talk about your career now, because I think, if my memory serves me correctly, you started at Liverpool, obviously great club. Talk to me about your debut. How was that for you?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, debut at White Hart Lane. It was against obviously Tottenham in the League Cup in 2004, I think. Yeah, God, long time ago. I remember the day before, and I broke down, and I couldn't get to training. My car broke down, and the manager, the coach, Hughie McCauley, has said to him, "Listen, I can't get in," and he's gone, "You're getting in, mate." He said, "You need to do whatever you can, get a train, taxi, whatever." Yeah. He says, "You're in the team," and I said, "What?" He said, "You're in the team shape." He said, "Get in. I'm not supposed to tell you, but get in." I was like, right, scrambling to get a lift. Can anyone pick me up and take me? I get in the team, and I just remember feeling like, all right, okay, this is happening. I got down there, stayed in a hotel, and I wasn't nervous at all until I got to White Hart Lane. I walked on the pitch, and I was like, "Oh, this is happening. Yeah, this is happening. This is real." Rafa Benitez does that with the team. This is their team, and I'm seeing Michael Carrick and Ledley King and all that, and I'm going, "Uh-oh, I'm not ready for this." Absolutely crapping me pants. And I was nervous. I was, for the first, say, 15 minutes or so, I was nervous. Ball was coming near me, and I was like, "Whoa, this is the real deal." Full house. And then all of a sudden, I settled into the game, and my energy was just through the roof. I was up and down, and we were great, and we won on penalties after extra time, and it was just an amazing experience with the lights and the crowd. And yeah, I just wanted more of it. I got a few sniffs after it. I got to play 4 games in total, and I just couldn't make that next step. I just couldn't do it. My ability wasn't there, my strength, my pace, and all the rest. It just needed to be that. I mean, say, give me 20 games, I could have found me legs at the level, fine, 100%. But Liverpool need more than that. They don't need someone to just slot in and be a steady Eddie. And so I just couldn't make that next step. And I knew at that point then I needed to go and play if I was going to be a footballer, and to go and carve a career out. And I left with a year left on my contract to go and join Carlisle in League One at the time. And it was great. It was the best thing I ever did. I loved it. There was no decision there to make. It was done. You know, people often ask, "It must have been hard to leave." I was like, no, not at all. It wasn't even a decision. And Carlisle was great.
So just 2 things. So again, this is another thing. People don't realise how hard it is to sustain a career, not just in professional football, but in the Premier League. That is just, they're all Rolls Royces, Ferraris, whatever you want to name it, they're prestige. Because everyone's fast. Everyone's a lot stronger than what you're used to, regardless of whether you've been absolutely flying in training or reserves. When you make that step up, I couldn't believe how fast everyone was. I felt like I was treading water, and I was always one of the fastest in any team I played in. And I just made my debut, and I was just like, "What is going on?" Because there was just players just flying everywhere, and the ball's zipping everywhere, and I just thought, "Wow, it's just scary." So and then you mentioned there, it wasn't a decision to make to go to Carlisle. So again, similar to me, I'm assuming you just wanted to play first team football.
I was desperate. Yeah.
How was that?
I was in the England setup from 15 to 20, so I was mixing with boys who had, one, Wayne Rooney, but he was a different kettle of fish. But the other guys of like Wayne Routledge and even James Milner and Gary Cahill. But my peers were out playing championship football and played 50, 100 games by the time they were 20 years old. And I was like, I've played 4 games. I'm miles behind here. I am miles behind.
Mm.
All the lads at Liverpool had come through with, we're all playing at Millwall and Southampton and all this. And I was like, I need to play. I was desperate to play. And
Yeah.
so that's why there was just no decision for me. I felt miles behind. Whereas now I just think it's a bit different now.
Yeah.
You're getting that under 23s and it's like, well, you know, you're getting that little bit longer. And I think, you know, I was playing in the reserves with first team players. I don't think you get that exposure now. So it was, I would definitely recommend to any player, if you want to go and play, you need to just go and play. Don't stick around in this 23s. But that's my opinion.
100%. Yeah, it's true. I mean, players get a little bit longer now. There's in the 23s and whatever, and there's players there who are knocking around and helping for years who you've never really heard of, who haven't played a game at first team level anywhere. Whereas when we were younger, it was like 18, 19, you need to play some games. And that was, it's just crazy. When you look back now, it's like 18. And I'm thinking I need to be playing some games, which is a good mentality to have. And especially when you get a taste of it, you just want more. That's just how I was anyway. It sounds like you were the same. And I know I speak to loads of people and they're same train of thought as well. You went to Carlisle, obviously that's a step down in terms of the pyramid, but obviously you're playing first team football. So how did you find it? And I'm talking everything now. So infrastructure, training, kind of playing at that level as well.
I initially found it tough and I didn't play that well when I first went because it was the shock of I had to wash my own kit. I had to, there was no lunch. There was, the lads were different. They were, seasoned pros, a few of them, seasoned heavy drinkers as well. There was a culture there and it was a bit of a shock. But it was after a few months, I went in and actually replaced the previous year's player of the season, Paul Arneson. What a great lad. And I remember playing games when the fans were singing his name and I was like, bloody hell, this is hard, man. But it put hairs on my chest, when I look back and a bit of a skin on my back. But there was that, obviously. But Carlisle we were flying at the time. League One, it was like our average crowd was like 7,000-8,000 people. It was a club. It was just feel good. It was on the up. Just been bought by an owner who wanted to buy, put money into it and stuff. So that was great. And after like a few months of it, I really found my feet and I absolutely loved it for a good few years. We should have been promoted to the Championship and we weren't, but that's, another story. But yeah, I found the actual change of the culture shock quite difficult at times. At the very beginning. Yeah.
100%. I found it difficult as well, and so I can obviously resonate with what you're saying. You touched on earlier that you played kind of for England throughout the youth level, so I believe like under 16s, 18s, 19s, 20s, if that's correct. How was that for you? Obviously pulling on the England shirt and playing at that level as well, because again, that's another step up.
That was amazing. Place, some of the experiences, places we went, players we played against. We played in the championships, European Championships in Denmark. So Wayne Rooney was in our team then. He went home and then like skyrocketed to superhuman capabilities and did what he did for the rest of his career. But I remember Philip Senderos playing for Switzerland, and I was thinking, wow, he's the only player that ever had Wayne Rooney not in his pocket, but like Wayne Rooney didn't run amok as he usually did. I remember guys in the French team who went on to play in World Cups for Algeria. They must have changed their so there's some top players and like really good experiences playing against the likes of the Hollands and stuff who just pop everywhere. But it was just an absolute honour. I loved it. I just loved everything about it. And at the time, you probably know yourself, you just take it for granted, don't you? And it's when you look back afterwards and it's like, oh, I've not been picked for this squad. I got to 20. And by that time, if you're getting into the 21s, you're a Premier League player. And I wasn't. So it's sort of accepting that as well. Yeah. But it was great. That was amazing. Some amazing experiences.
Amazing stuff, that is. Obviously, you've mentioned earlier about kind of what you think needs to be done to help players. So we've spoken about obviously clubs, again parents as well. I don't think we mentioned that the parents need to obviously take a look at themselves as well.
Massively.
Mentioned the FA, PFA as well, and also the players. They need to have that kind of gumption, that know-how, that willingness as well. Is there any advice though that you would give? And I'm talking and kind of players that are young, maybe going into academies in the next year or two, ones that are actually in the academies, and then obviously the older ones as well, who are maybe coming towards the end of their careers and they're transitioning away shortly. Any advice that you want to give those?
I had a friend who rang me a few weeks back, and he asked me the same. He's said, listen, I don't think I'm going to get something here next year. Just wondering how it went for you, what you do and stuff. And I said, if I could go back, as I just be busy, speak to people, just speak to people. People will help you. That's how people are. You just need to start dialogue, conversation, and there's no sort of shame in putting out there that you're looking for a job and you want a job and this is what I'm good at and this is what I'd like to do. There's no shame in it, and it takes a bit of bold for players to do that. I think we need to teach them that it's a good thing, and it's looked at with a bit, as I say, a bit of shame. In terms of like academies, again, I had another experience I had as a friend's lad has been scouted for an academy by ours, and he said, what do you think? And I said, I wouldn't send him if it was my boy. I wouldn't send him at least till he was 11, 12 years old. You get that institutionalized, get to 17, 18, and all right, I'm just expecting the next thing to happen now because I've been here for 10, 15 years. And that is a big issue for me. When you're scouting and getting kids in at 4 or 5 years old, 6 years old, it's too early. Right. And that doesn't help. And if you are going to get them in that early, then you've got a duty of care to help them when they leave. Because you have institutionalized them. So, in terms of lads leaving, I'd just speak to people, just talk, just be brave, get out there, get on LinkedIn, get on Twitter, get on all these things, and things happen. And you've just got to be patient. The other piece of advice I got that was great was just go with the flow. That was off an old manager of mine, Paul Carden. He said, listen, mate, you're just going to have to just go with the flow. It's going to be up and down, and just go with it. It'll work out. So that's hard to say.
Brilliant, mate. Great advice. And again, I'd second that as well. You'd be surprised at how many people are actually looking for people to do different things in terms of employment. And when they see someone who's willing to put themselves out there, like you said on LinkedIn, I'm looking for a job. This is what I'm good at, X, Y, and Z. 100% guarantee you're going to get at least one response. You may not get a job. It may just be someone who says, look, brilliant that you've done this. I know someone who's looking for someone like yourself. Or they may well just remember you going down maybe 6 or 7 weeks after that and think, oh, that person that's been pretty active on there, put themselves out there. So again, that's great advice. Appreciate you coming on today. Obviously enjoyed the chat. I'm going to look out for obviously that thing that you're looking to do, the software thing. Just let me know when that's released. Sounds interesting.
It is. It's a non-league. It's
Yeah.
exciting for us. It's really exciting, and I can't wait to let's say get out there properly, because I've been speaking to managers and stuff, and they all seem really keen. So it's it'd be great.
Amazing. Just let us know where we can find you personally. So on the social media, obviously you're playing for Marine. But big them up.
Yeah, Marine, so big them up, give them a watch if you can. So I'm on LinkedIn, just David Raven on LinkedIn, and on Twitter as well. I think I'm Dave Raven 2, I think, or something like that. So that's me.
Awesome, mate. Well, keep in touch. Obviously we spoke before. I was looking on my phone, it was like probably about a year ago we spoke.
We did,
Seems like ages ago, but keep in touch anyway, and like I said, appreciate you coming on.
Top man, thanks for having me on, mate. I enjoyed it. Cheers.
Speak soon. Cheers, mate. Bye.